What is going on, guys? So we are still very much in the month of MCU, as I'm calling it, where I'm doing a bunch of MCU content because Black Panther Wakanda Forever just came out, and it's going to be a while before the next MCU project. So I figured I would do a tier list of every major MCU character, kind of similar to the one I did for Scream. The Scream one was 54 characters, and that took over an hour. This one has about 150. So I'm going to run through these pretty quickly, aside from a few characters that are like the most iconic ones. I'll talk about them a little bit more, but most of them I'm going to try to get through as quick as possible because I don't want to be here for 5 hours. I also, because there is so many, I'm not going to rank them like I do with a lot of my tier lists, like I did for my Scream one. I will put them on the tiers and then rank them within the tiers. I won't be doing that here because there's just so damn many, but I will be putting all of these characters on tiers, and I also am going to spoil every single MCU movie and TV show, so if you haven't seen any of these, just fair warning on that. Alright, so I think with all that preamble out of the way, let's get right into it, and starting right off with Tony Stark. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to put him on the S tier. Tony is arguably the best character in the entire MCU and one of the best fictional characters of all time, portrayed perfectly by Robert Downey Jr. He was born to play this role, kicked off the MCU with a movie that was so much better than it had any right to be, has a great character arc in the first movie, and a really, really great character arc throughout the entire MCU, to where he starts off as like this free-loving guy who doesn't want to give up his property and doesn't care about anything, and ends up finding out, what the damage his weapons are causing, and through the mistakes he makes throughout the entire MCU, becomes really guilty and decides he wants to be under some sort of supervision and starts to take more responsibility for himself, so you understand why he's on the side that he's on in Civil War, and then by the end ends up sacrificing himself to save the entire universe after getting his 5 years with Pepper and a kid. So a great character with an excellent character arc. Zero complaints about Tony Stark, one of the best characters ever created.
Fantastic.
Whiplash is not one of the best characters ever created. I'm not going to put him on the F, but I'm putting him on the E. Whiplash sucks. He's one of the worst villains in the entire MCU. Mickey Rourke totally phones it in for the role. Could have been a fun character, potentially interesting idea, but he kind of just sits around and talks about, where's my board, for like a majority of the movie, and then shows up a couple times to fight Tony, and I just did not dig this character at all. Performance, writing, any of it. Thena is one of the better characters in Eternals. I'm putting her on the B tier. She's a badass. I love the performance by Angelina Jolie. I love that she's kind of getting drawn to the dark side by the deviants and her struggles with that. So B tier. I don't think I'm going to put any of the Eternals on the A tier yet, but Gilgamesh I'm putting on the B tier as well. I love the dynamic between these two. One of the better parts of Eternals. Gilgamesh is a very fun and funny character. Sucks that he died. I want to see a little bit more of him, but also his death was a well-done death, and it was kind of necessary to add stakes to the movie, but he's like grilling and making Alfred jokes and stuff. Just so much great stuff. Okay, Sprite, on the other hand, is not a good character. Sprite sucks. It's an idea that the idea that this kid who basically is 1,000 years old but never ages, so is always a kid, you could maybe do some interesting things with that idea, but in this movie she just complains the entire time and betrays the heroes, and then I guess somehow gets redeemed and doesn't face any consequences for it. So that was unfortunate, a character that I did not like at all. Druig, on the other hand, I thought was quite good. I'm putting him on the B tier as well. I love his dynamic with Makari, who's coming right up next. I love how he calls out the bullshit of the Eternals and the Celestials about, like, we really need to be doing more, and he's totally right. So he's a character that we as people definitely relate to. Makari is also really good. She's going on the B tier as well. I love the dynamic between these two. They have great chemistry and tension, sexual tension between them. Like, damn, when you saw them together, like, whoa, that's nice. Like, that looks real. You totally buy into that. And I love that they're including more people from different backgrounds and things. Like, she's a deaf person and they put her in a deaf role. I thought that was awesome. And she's got a great smile, just a character who lights up the screen every time you see her, and the way that her super speed is visualized in this movie is awesome. It looks really, really cool, and she's totally badass. Definitely one of the coolest looks as far as super speed goes in movies, maybe the coolest. So I quite dug Makkari. Can't remember the name of Kumail Nanjiani's character, but he's going on the C tier. He is funny, definitely the funniest and most fun Eternal, but I don't really like the idea of him not wanting to fight in the final battle. That was strange to me, considering how much he has embraced Earth and its people. So that's why he's in the C and not higher, but I did enjoy him anyway. Kate Bishop. Kate Bishop is going on the A tier. Kate was awesome. Haley Steinfeld killed it in this role. Just such a fun, likable, quirky character that we relate to. Just seems like a regular person who is obsessed with Hawkeye and wants to help out and do the right thing. Her dynamic with Hawkeye is great. Her dynamic with Yelena is great. Can't wait to see more of her and more of her interactions with those characters specifically. Is that Echo? Some of these, I can't really tell. I'm going to put this on Who for now. I can't really tell, honestly. Kingpin. Now, if we're talking strictly in the MCU, if we're talking strictly in Hawkeye and not including the Netflix stuff, he's going on C. If we were including Netflix, he would be on the S, but that's not MCU canon. A lot of people think it is. They want it to be. That's fine, but nothing, despite what people keep saying, nothing has confirmed that the Netflix stuff is canon. So we are only talking about specifically MCU projects, and he was fine in Hawkeye, definitely very badass. I mean, Vincent D'Onofrio kills it. I mean, he is so good in this role, but the character himself, not great. We're definitely going to see more of him because he's obviously still alive. They definitely powered him up. I mean, he is not just a big, strong guy. I think he has actual superpowers in this version, which, again, proves that this is a new version of the character. And it seemed like they dumped him down a little bit. He was dressing kind of funny. So, yeah, badass, some cool moments in there, but definitely didn't get the characterization that we got and kind of the more calculated nature that we got from him in Daredevil. I don't know who that is. I might figure it out later, but for now, putting them on Who. Natasha, I can't quite put Natasha on the S tier because very few characters are going to be on the S tier at all, but Natasha's great. She's someone who gets introduced early and doesn't get a ton of characterization for a while, but ends up getting pretty well fleshed out by the end. And I think the ending of her character, sacrificing herself to save Clint so Clint can go back to his family and essentially repaying Clint for saving her life back in the day. I thought that was really well done and portrayed really well by Scarlett Johansson. So Natasha is a very good character, one of the original Avengers.
Thank you for your cooperation.
Doc Ock, again, if we're talking strictly in the MCU, if we're not including Spider-Man 2, I'm going to put him on the B tier. If we were including Spider-Man 2, he's probably S tier, one of the best villains of all time. And he's still really good in No Way Home, just not quite as good as he was in Spider-Man 2. Gets a little bit outshined by Willem Dafoe, actually, but still quite good. And I love seeing the softer side of him, the real version of Otto Octavius, who's a good guy, and they cure him, and he ends up helping the Spider-Man in the end. I really dug that. And his interaction with Tobey was awesome as well. However, Green Goblin is going on the A tier. That's how great he was in No Way Home. I mean, he was good in the original Spider-Man, which, again, I'm not including, but he was just incredible in No Way Home. Willem Dafoe stole the show in this movie, and the way he portrays both sides of the character to where he can portray the kind of lost, scared, nice version that is Norman Osborn is just kind of trying to figure out what's going on and trying to go back home. And then how quickly he's able to switch to the sinister, evil Green Goblin is nothing short of incredible. And the scene in No Way Home where Peter figures him out with his spider senses and then you see the switch on Willem Dafoe's face, just incredible stuff. Got some great lines in there, great action as well. He kills Aunt May, so he's a villain that actually does some real damage to the hero, so for that reason, he's on the A tier. Daredevil, if we're, again, just talking MCU, I think he made a really good impression just in that one episode of She-Hulk and a little bit in the finale as well, but I thought he was awesome. I mean, this very much seems like the Matt that we know, but we also get to see the softer side of him to where he really opens up and becomes vulnerable with Jennifer, and they end up having sex in the end, which I thought was great. And he also still gets to kick ass, and he's still the badass Daredevil that we remember. So I thought he was great, and obviously he's going to move up this list once we see more of him in the MCU. I'm sure by the end of like the first season of Daredevil Born Again, he'll be on the A or S tier. And if we were including Netflix, it'd be on the S, but we're not. So for now, he's on the B. That's how good he was just in the few minutes of screen time he got in She-Hulk. Garfield's Spider-Man, I'm going to put him on the A tier. That's how great I think he was in No Way Home. Just like Green Goblin, who stole the show for the villains, I think that Garfield's Spider-Man stole the show for the heroes. I never thought that Garfield was the best Spider-Man. After watching No Way Home, I now think that he is. I think that he gave the best performance of the three, which all three of them were great, and he also gave his best performance as the character. We finally got to see how good Andrew Garfield is as this character when he actually has good writing and good directing, because he was just incredible in this movie. And the stuff talking about Gwen and how he got rageful and bitter, and then the interactions with the other Spider-Men, both funny and serious, and then he gets kind of the redemptive moment with saving MJ. Just so much great stuff, and just the look on his face when he does that. Incredible acting by Andrew, and I have to put him on the A tier. Just, he was that good in No Way Home. Toby was also great in No Way Home. I'm putting him on the B tier. He wasn't quite as good as Garfield was, but I think this is also Toby's best performance as the character. I think that No Way Home contained the best performance by all three of the Spider-Man actors, and I was not a massive fan of Toby in the original ones, but he was really good here. Again, love the interactions with the other Spider-Man, especially the stuff talking about like the webs coming from his body. Just great stuff there. Toby was great in No Way Home. Moon Knight. I think, so this is Mark and this is Steven. I quite enjoyed both sides of the character, and I was very disappointed in Moon Knight overall. Kind of felt like wasted potential. But the best part of the show by far was the performance by Oscar Isaac, how well he was able to portray both sides of this character, both personalities, was so well done. I think I'm putting him on the B tier for now. Certainly could move up if we see more of him. I'm putting both versions, Mark and Steven, on the B tier. I would love to see more of him down the line, but I think both versions of the character, both personalities were really well done and really well portrayed by Oscar Isaac. Khonshu, I don't know. I mean, Khonshu was fine. He certainly has some cool lines and a badass voice and was pretty important to the plot of Moon Knight, but also wasn't in that many scenes and just didn't really stand out that much to me, so he's going on the D tier. The girl from Moon Knight, I don't remember her name. I'm sorry, I'm not going to remember all of these characters' names, but I liked her. I certainly would like to see more of her. Putting her on the C tier. She was fun. Ethan Hawke's villain, I can't remember his name either. I'm going to put him on the C tier as well. Ethan Hawke gave a great performance, but the villain overall, I remember being mixed. I just didn't quite live up to expectations, felt like wasted potential, and then ended up getting killed in the end by a character that we don't even really know. So, Justin Hammer. You know, I'm considering putting Justin Hammer on the A tier. That is how fucking awesome I think he is. I'm going to put him on the B tier for now. Justin Hammer is one of the most underrated villains in the entire MCU. Iron Man 2 is quite messy, but Sam Rockwell's performance to me is the best part of that movie. He steals every scene that he is in, is kind of a wannabe Tony Stark, but isn't as good at what he does. I mean, you get the scene with him selling the weapons, like, I'll call her the ex-wife. And then the dancing part, just absolutely iconic. And he's still alive, so I hope we get to see more of him in the MCU. And Rockwell has expressed his desire to return to the role. So please, please, please bring back Justin Hammer. America Chavez, I'm putting on the C tier. I like her. I thought that Xochitl Gomez did a good job in the role, but she was kind of just a plot device in Multiverse of Madness, a movie that I had quite a few issues with, and that was one of them. So I hope they explore more explore her as an actual character more, and I'm sure they will down the line because she's definitely going to be back. Miss Marvel, I am putting on the B tier. I enjoyed her quite a bit. She is a very likable character, just seems like a regular kid who wants to be a superhero and idolizes superheroes and kind of just gets caught up in this thing. I love her interactions with her family. The family dynamic was by far and away the best part of Miss Marvel, and Miss Marvel herself is a very enjoyable character. B tier. Gore is a really good villain. Not quite a great villain. He could have been like a top tier MCU villain if he was fleshed out just a little bit more. Got a few more scenes, maybe just 1 or 2 more scenes of him actually killing gods. Then he'd be probably an A tier character. But what we got from him was still really good. I mean, Christian Bale kills it in the role. He's a character that's super scary and super threatening, but you also feel for him. He has a really tragic backstory, and you understand why he feels the way he does about gods and why he wants to kill all of them. But that ends up having this redemption arc in the end where he decides not to kill all the gods and brings back his daughter instead. So I thought that was a very fitting end to the character and a villain that felt like a real threat throughout the movie and has some really, really good scenes. Zeus. A lot of people hated this version of Zeus. I do not understand why. I thought he was a ton of fun. He's very, I believe it's very loyal, very accurate to the mythology. And aside from that, it also works really well with what the movie is trying to say about gods and how they're not who you think they are and how they don't really care about you and just care about, showing off and getting attention and living in their ivory towers, like not wanting to take any risks. I thought that Russell Crowe Zeus was a great visualization of that. He is only in one scene, so you know what? I am putting him on B. Screw it. That's how awesome I thought Zeus was. And we're going to see him more in the MCU because he did survive. We thought he had died, but he survived and is now sending his son Hercules, played by none other than Roy Kent, to go after Thor. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to see him again. I thought he was perfect in the movie.
You cannot come to the orgy.
Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk, is going on the B tier. I was mixed on She-Hulk. I dug most of the show. I was liking the humor. I loved the second to last episode with Daredevil. However, the last episode, I didn't love it that much because it felt like a cop-out. Felt like they were kind of cheating. They were finding a way to not have to properly wrap up all of these storylines, so I didn't love that part of it. But Jennifer Walters as a character is really good, and I love her struggles trying to date in her 30s and figure out how to balance Jennifer and She-Hulk. I thought all that was really good, so she's in the B tier. I believe that this is the werewolf from Werewolf by Night because he's next to the girl and Man-Beast. So that's what he's called, Man-Beast, right? No, I'm tripping. I'm going to put the werewolf. I mean, I liked Werewolf by Night, but it's only 50 minutes long, so it's hard to get like real characterization, real character development. So I'm putting him on C because he was fun. The girl, we got a little bit more development from, so I'm going to put her on B. I liked her a lot, and we got hints of her past, so I hope we see her again and they explore more of her as a character down the line. Oh, is it Man-Thing? You know what? I'm looking it up. This is all in real time here, and I'm going to try to do this all in one take. I think it's Man-Thing. Yes, it is Man-Thing. Okay. Man-Thing I enjoyed, kind of similar to the werewolf guy. I mean, he doesn't get a ton of screen time, but he made the most of it and is a very enjoyable character, so I'm going to go see. Ironheart. Ironheart's a character that I liked her. I enjoyed her in the movie, even though I don't think that her character was necessary in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I know people say that, well, she was integral to the plot. Yes, because the movie decided to make her integral to the plot. They found a way to include her. Now, they could have found a different way to have this conflict arise without having to have this 20-minute sidetrack, and the movie would have flowed better. But as a character, I enjoyed her. I thought she was fine, so I'm going C. And she probably could move up after we see her Disney Plus series. You know, I'm not sure who this is. Is this the one? I know this is one of Namor's people, but is this the one that fought Okoye, or is it the other one? Who's this? I can't remember which one's which, honestly. I know there's one that I've only seen Wakanda Forever once, and there was one that fought Okoye that totally kicked her ass after she kicked the ass of the other 3. I'm not entirely sure, so I'm going to put these on Who for now, and I'll come back to them. Namor. Namor is one of the better MCU villains. I have a little bit of issues with his motivations. I don't quite buy the jump from going up to the surface and seeing how bad slave owners were and killing them all, which was base, but then going from that to, I want to start a preemptive war with the entire surface world. Just didn't quite do the work to get there for me. However, everything else with the character was great. Tene Huerta, I hope I'm saying that right, he was excellent in the role. A very dynamic character that is able to be both very likable and seems like a guy that you could have a conversation with. His conversations with Shuri were great, and they could also be extremely threatening, and he's very powerful. Can I put him on A? Well, nope, I'm putting him on B for now. That's where I'm going to put him, but he certainly could move up because the character is still alive, and we're definitely going to see him down the line. Thor, I am putting on A. I can't quite put him on S. He's really close. A lot of people have issues with the inconsistent writing of the character. I understand that, but I also think that where he's at now is a natural progression of the character. This is just Thor finally being himself, finally enjoying life. And when things get serious, so does Thor. But he just prefers to have more fun. And that, I buy that. That seems like natural progression the character would go after everything that he's been through. But the best version of the character to me was Ragnarok and Infinity War. After he lost everything and becomes kind of rageful Thor who wants to get revenge on Thanos, and the conversation he has with Rocket. That was the best Thor to me, and I also really like the short hair. But Thor is overall one of the best characters in the MCU, A tier. Loki is also one of the best characters in the MCU. You know what? I might put Loki at, I'm putting Loki on S. Actually, screw it. Thor is going on S as well. Yes! I think Thor has been great. And the characterization of him, I'm totally into. I totally buy it. Makes sense to me. Loki is one of the best characters in the entire MCU. He was one of the best villains in the first Avengers movie, and then he ends up becoming one of the best heroes. He has 2 redemption arcs, actually. He has the original one where he dies trying to kill Thanos, and then he has the one in the Loki show, which I think is what definitely elevated him to the S tier for me, because his arc in that show was so good, to where he learns about how cruel he was and has these discussions with Owen Wilson's character. Just great stuff there. So Loki, S tier, one of the best characters in the MCU.
I'm honored.
Odin. I like Anthony Hopkins' performance. I don't know that I can say that Odin is a great character. Doesn't really have much of an arc. I'm going to put him on the C tier. A lot of the bad things that happen in the Thor movies are Odin's fault. I mean, Loki being bad is his fault. Hela coming back in Ragnarok is his fault. And he never really takes responsibility for that stuff. He kind of just dies. So that's why, I mean, the performance is really good. I like a lot of his interactions with his sons, and I like his reaction when his wife died was really heartbreaking as well. But I just can't say Odin is a character that I think is like one of the better MCU characters. I think he's just fine. I think this is Jane. Yes, that's Jane. I was not a big fan of Jane. In the first 2 Thor movies, I did not buy her relationship with Thor at all. However, she was much better in Love and Thunder, so I'm putting her on the B tier. I bought their relationship. I thought it was really well done, and I love the characterization. She is dying from cancer and decides to become a Thor to basically live out the last days of her life, fighting bad guys and doing good things and living in the moment. So I love that about her, and her death was really touching as well, and the fact that she got into Valhalla. So I thought that was a fitting end to the character. And a lot of people say, well, since we saw her in Valhalla, I mean, she's going to come back. No, I mean, Valhalla is literally like heaven for Asgardians, so I think she's dead. It was just kind of to give us some more closure for the character, to make us happy for the fact that she made it there. Is that Heimdall? Some of these are really hard to see. Hold on. I think that's Heimdall. I like Heimdall. I'm going to put him on the C tier. I mean, Idris Elba's performance is really good, but not a character that we dive really deep into. And we care about him when he dies, but mostly because of how sad Thor is. Sif. I like Sif quite a bit. I'm going to put her on the B tier. She's a character that was one of the best parts of the first 2 Thor movies, then kind of disappeared for a bit, and then we saw her a little bit in Love and Thunder. We thought she was going to die, which would have really pissed me off, but she's still alive and is back in New Asgard training people, so it's really cool. Can't wait to see more of her down the line. Hawkeye is going on the A tier. He is a character that kind of took a bit to get going. I mean, we didn't really get much characterization from him in the first Avengers movie because he was fighting against them the whole time. Got a little bit in Age of Ultron, and then got a lot in Endgame, to where his family dies, they get dusted, and he goes on this rampage, killing all of these mobsters because he's angry at the world for killing his family, but leaving them alive, which totally makes sense. I mean, that's kind of he kind of acted like the Punisher. There are a lot of aspects about the Punisher that I like. He's one of my favorite Marvel characters overall, so I dug that. And then he kind of has this little redemption arc in Endgame as well. And then you get Hawkeye, where he's still dealing with all of the things he did as Ronin, while also taking Kate Bishop under his wing. So, and then just further fleshes out the character. So Hawkeye is on the A tier. Ended up being one of the better MCU characters.
Just can't seem to miss.
Happy Hogan. Happy Hogan, I'm going to put on... You know what? I'm putting him on the B tier. Happy is just so damn enjoyable. We got a little bit from him in the Iron Man movies and got quite a bit more in the Spider-Man movies. And that's where I really started to enjoy him. I liked him a lot in Homecoming, where he's like ignoring Peter's calls and stuff. And then in Far From Home, where he's working with Peter a lot more. And people like, you work for Spider-Man? No, I work with Spider-Man. The great interaction with Peter talking about Tony. Just really cool stuff. And then you get him in No Way Home. Some funny scenes there. So Happy is just a really enjoyable, fun character. Jon Favreau is awesome in the role. Steve Rogers, I mean, come on. S tier, easily. Another character with Tony Stark that you could make an argument is the best character in the entire MCU. The idea of Captain America seems like kind of just a Boy Scout, a guy who just has an unwavering moral compass, which is basically what he is in First Avenger, which is good. It works well for that movie. But as the MCU goes along, we get much more development. We dive a lot deeper into his psyche, especially starting with Winter Soldier, to where he realizes that things are different now. They're not the way that they were when he was, before he went on ice in the 40s, where it was really clear who the heroes were and who the villains were, who the good guys were and who the bad guys were. And now he's in the current time, and it's a lot muddier. It's a lot grayer, and he learns that you can't trust the government, and it completely changes his character, and he ends up being anti-Accords in Civil War because of that, and then basically learns from Tony and ends up living with Peggy Carter, which I thought was great. I will defend that to the death. A lot of people had a problem with that. It fit perfectly, just like Tony's sacrifice fit perfectly. So this character is one of the better fictional characters ever created, and Chris Evans just absolutely kills it in the role.
Language.
Bucky. I'm going to put Bucky on the A tier. Bucky is a really good character. We get a little bit of him in First Avenger, and then he dies, which if we would have just gotten First Avenger and he was actually dead, I wouldn't have really felt much, because I didn't feel like his death in First Avenger was that impactful. And then we cared about Steve and Bucky's relationship because of his future appearances and the fact that he was the Winter Soldier and stuff. He was a scary-ass villain as the Winter Soldier when he's brainwashed, and then once we get more into Bucky himself, see a little bit of it in Winter Soldier and then in Civil War, just a very broken guy who is a really good guy deep down and never did anything wrong, but just got caught up in this and got brainwashed, and there was nothing he could do about it. But he also remembers all the people that he killed, so very complex, layered, tragic character. And we got some really, really good stuff with him in Falcon Winter Soldier as well, like making amends and finally being free. The scene with Io, I believe is her name, which was really well done. And then the scene at the end with him and the father of the guy that he killed was just so heartbreaking, but also so necessary for the character. Peggy Carter. I like Peggy and putting her on the B tier just because we don't get much characterization from her. I really, really enjoy her in First Avenger. I think that her and Steve is one of the best romances in the entire MCU, and I love that Steve ends up with her. So, and she's basically on his mind the entire time. Then the one appearance we get from her in Winter Soldier, where she's older, I thought that was really well done, where she's losing her memory. That was a really, really heartbreaking scene. Red Skull. Well, you know, if it was just First Avenger, he'd probably be like D or C. But because of his appearances in Infinity War and Endgame, I'm putting him on B. I really, really liked his roles in those movies because he's not someone we expected to be alive. We thought he was dead. And First Avenger, I mean, Hugo Weaving's performance is really good. That's what makes the character enjoyable and watchable. But aside from that, he's a pretty generic villain. Then we see him again in Infinity War, which is like a whoa moment, like when he shows up. That was really cool. And the fact that he's been guarding the Soul Stone this whole time because he sought out one of the Infinity Stones before, and this is kind of like his punishment. And it's not Hugo Weaving anymore, but the guy, I think it's Ross Marquardt, the impressionist who does the voice for him. Just actually, it might not just be the voice, it might be the whole thing. But that was so good and just makes the most of the screen time that he has in Infinity War and Endgame, because it's not much, but he has some really good lines in there, like, "They are not for him." Oh man, incredible. Maria Hill, I like, again, a character that we haven't gotten much development from, but I like Colby Smulders in the role. She's a fun, badass character. Don't really have a ton much more to say about her, but we're going to see more of her in Secret Invasion, which is a show that I am really, really looking forward to, so can't wait to see more characterization from her. Thanos is going on the S tier. Thanos is one of the best villains of all time, by far and away the best villain in the entire MCU to me, because he's a character that is incredibly threatening, incredibly imposing, incredibly powerful and scary, and we establish how much of a threat he is in the opening scene of Infinity War. But as Infinity War goes on, we get a little bit more into why he's doing what he's doing and his tragic backstory, and he's a very complex character, kind of a broken character who his entire planet, basically everyone died off because of starvation, despite the fact that he offered a solution of killing off half of the population so the other half could thrive. So now he sets out to do that with the entire universe by collecting the Infinity Stones and snapping his fingers, which is something that's horrible because you're killing so many people and so many beings, so many lives, trillions of lives. But he's doing it for a noble purpose because he believes if he doesn't do it, then everyone's going to die of starvation due to lack of resources. And he succeeds in Infinity War. He defeats the Avengers. That's the first time we had seen that happen, and the ending of Infinity War is so good, just with this scene right here, him looking out in a grateful universe. And we get a little bit more of him in Endgame. I defend the characterization in Endgame to where he decides to basically wipe everything out because he saw another version of himself succeed, and the Avengers still want to undo it. So it makes sense that his motivations shifted given what happened, but I still much prefer the Infinity War version because he's basically the main character and is present throughout the entire movie.
The hardest choices require the strongest wills.
Harley, I think, is the kid's name in Iron Man 3. Not a big fan of Iron Man 3, but this was one of the better parts of the movie, was the interactions between him and Tony. I'm going to put him on C for now, and he also showed up at Tony's funeral, which was a nice touch, but it's not a character that we got like a ton of development from, so I think C is a good spot for him. The Fake Mandarin, a.k.a. Trevor Slattery. You know, if this was just Iron Man 3, I would have put him on F. In fact, I might have even created another tier, which is like below F, because that's how much I hated the Mandarin twist, how stupid I thought it was, and then the rest of the movie sucked, and that's why I'm not a fan of Iron Man 3. However, he does kind of redeem himself in Shang-Chi. I actually quite enjoyed him in Shang-Chi, so you kind of have to balance those. Like, if it was just Shang-Chi, he'd be in like B or C, but if it was just Iron Man 3, he'd be an F. So I'm going to go D. I think that's a good compromise for that character. Speaking of Iron Man 3, Killian is one of the worst villains in the MCU. I'm putting him on E. Super generic, super forgettable. He has that stupid backstory that we've seen so many times where he gets like ignored or screwed over by his hero and then ends up wanting to become evil because of that. We've seen it with Riddler and with Syndrome and with Electro. It's a trope that has gotten really old by this point, and this is one of the worst versions of it, especially because you trade in a potentially interesting and compelling and badass villain like the Mandarin for a super generic villain in Aldrich Killian. And I like Guy Pearce as an actor quite a bit, but this villain just was not it. Speaking of villains that were not it, Malekith is probably the worst villain in the entire MCU. And the MCU has had some bad villains, but Malekith is the worst one. He's going on the F tier. Super forgettable, super generic villain that I don't even really remember or understand what his plan was, what exactly he was trying to do. Pepper Potts. Pepper Potts is going on the B tier. I like Pepper quite a bit, but we also don't get a ton of her kind of doing her own thing. Almost all of her scenes are with Tony and bouncing off of Tony, kind of to be, she's there to interact with Tony and does a really good job with that, but I'd like to see her stand on her own a little bit more. I don't know if we'll ever see her again after Tony's death. I hope we do. Gwyneth Paltrow is a weirdo in real life, but I would like to see more of Pepper Potts because I think she is a good character. Sam Wilson is going on the A tier. You know, I had my problems with Falcon and Winter Soldier, but the development of these two characters was not one of them. That was the best part of the show by far. Sam was already a pretty enjoyable character before Falcon and Winter Soldier. I liked him a lot in Winter Soldier and Civil War, but for a while he was kind of just Cap's sidekick. He wasn't a guy that stood out on his own at all. Falcon and Winter Soldier, he finally got to do that, finally get to really get a peek into his life. Like, I love that we get to see his family and stuff, and then we get the arc from him deciding whether or not he wants to take up the shield, which is a very difficult decision for him given the history of African Americans and what it means to be a black man in America, and would people accept a black man as Captain America. So that was a really good arc for him, and despite the fact that a lot of people have problems with his speech at the end, it was too on the nose, I also thought it was kind of good, and it was also sort of necessary. Maybe it could have been delivered in a different way, sure, but Sam was really good in Falcon Winter Soldier, and he could potentially get to the S tier at some point, you know, because he's got his own Captain America movies coming up, which I'm really looking forward to. Crossbones. I like him. He's a villain that serves his purpose. I mean, he's kind of a side villain in Winter Soldier and was a good one. The performance by Frank Grillo was really good. And then he's the villain at the beginning of Civil War, which again serves his purpose, good performance, but gets killed off. So a villain that I like, but is not like a very well fleshed out or complex villain or anything. Sharon Carter. You know, I don't know. I don't love what they did with her in Falcon Winter Soldier. I'm going to put her on C for now. I liked her in Winter Soldier and Civil War. It was kind of weird that Cap made out with her given the fact that she was related to Peggy Carter, but I enjoyed aspects of her in Falcon Winter Soldier. I liked the ass-kicking scenes where she gets to just wreck shit. Like, that was awesome. Like, seeing her just kick ass was one of the best parts of the show. Finding out she's the power broker, I don't know. I'm kind of going to reserve judgment for that until we see where they go with it, because it was super predictable, and I was hoping they wouldn't go in that direction, but they did. So, again, we're going to see more of her down the line, for sure, as kind of like a super villain almost. So, we'll see what they do with that, but for now, I got her in a C tier. Star-Lord. I like Star-Lord, although I liked him quite a bit more in the beginning. I don't love what they've done with him recently, so I'm putting him on the B tier. I think he was really good in Guardians and quite good in Guardians 2. in Infinity War, he just becomes like super jealous and insecure, and I didn't love that characterization of him, and the fact that he couldn't control his emotions and ruined the Avengers' chances of defeating Thanos. So he is now probably one of my least favorite Guardians, but I like Chris Pratt in the role. I think he's a good pick for the role and portrays the character really well. And like I said, I quite enjoyed him in the first Guardians, but we'll see what they do with him in Guardians 3. For now, this is why I have him. Rocket, on the other hand, is going on the A tier. Rocket is my favorite Guardian. I mean, he was awesome in Guardians 1, Guardians 2, and he is the only Guardian of the original group that survives the snap, so we get a lot more of him in Endgame, and he has some really good stuff with Thor, both in Infinity War and in Endgame, so Rocket is awesome. He's a guy that has a very rough exterior, is kind of cynical and makes bad decisions, but is not a horrible person. I mean, you understand why he is the way he is, because he was taken apart and put back together. I don't know how many times, thousands of times he says it in the first Guardians movie. And we kind of dive a little bit deeper in him. He really cares about his friends, and we find that out in Endgame. So I can't wait to see what they do with him in Guardians 3. I'm a bit worried he's going to die, because a lot of people seem to be theorizing that that's going to happen. That would suck, but if it's well done, then it'll really hit me, because Rocket is a great character. So this is Baby Groot. Does that include Adult Groot as well? Because I think that Adult Groot was the best version of him by far. I think Baby Groot was fun in Guardians 2. Not a big fan of Teen Groot in Infinity War. So I think if this is all of the Groots combined, I don't know. I'm going to put him on the B tier. Adult Groot would be on the A tier probably, and Baby Groot would be on the B, and Teen would be on the C. So I think that's a good place to put him, right in the middle there. You know what? I'm going to just talk about Groot a little bit more. I loved Adult Groot in the first Guardians movie. I think he was awesome. And the fact that they got us to care so much about him. And when he dies in the movie, I mean, it was super sad. One of the saddest scenes in the entire MCU, that's in a movie that is one of the most fun and lighthearted. But when he says, "We are Groot," oh man, really tugging at the heartstrings. Like I said, Baby Groot was fun in Guardians 2, but not as good as the original Groot. And then Teen Groot was kind of annoying. So I think this is a good compromise. Drax. You know, Drax is another Guardian that started off better, but I don't love him now. He was really good in the first Guardians, possibly the best part of it, mainly because we didn't know how funny Drax was going to be. And then when he starts saying stuff like, "Nothing goes over my head, my reflexes are too strong," I would catch it like, oh, come on. I mean, that's just incredible stuff. Once you get into Guardians 2, and basically all of his humor comes from being really over the top mean to Mantis, I didn't love that. And then seems like they've dumbed him down quite a bit. I mean, he was always kind of dumb, like he was super literal in the first Guardians movie, but he was also a badass, and now he's just kind of there to be the butt of a joke all the time. But the jokes are good. Aside from the Mantis stuff, the jokes in Infinity War are really good, but I think B is a good place for Drax right now. Gamora is also going on B. I think Gamora is a good character, and she was a good kind of straight man or straight woman, I guess, for all the other Guardians, especially Star-Lord in the first two Guardians movies. She was someone who was really serious and not understanding a lot of Star-Lord's humor. I thought that worked really well. We didn't get a ton of development from her until Infinity War, where we learned quite a bit more about her backstory and relationship with Thanos, and then her ultimate tragic death. And then we get a different version of her kind of pulled into our timeline in Endgame, so we're going to see her more down the line. A different version of her, though, because the Gamora that we had, the Gamora that has been developed so much, is dead. So I'm interested to see what they're going to do with the different version of her that is now in our universe, because I think Guardians 3 is going to be spent looking for her, so we'll see what happens there. You know what? I'm putting Yondu in the A tier. Yondu is excellent. I mean, he was a fun, enjoyable character in the first Guardians movie, but he was by far and away the best part of Guardians 2. I have some problems with Guardians 2. I like it overall, but Yondu is easily the best part of it. His interactions with Rocket are so good, and him kind of learning, kind of reconciling with his cruelty over the years. And he ends up saving Star-Lord, and the line, "He may have been your father, boy, but he wasn't your daddy." Oh, man, that was so good. And then his sacrifice to save Quill is one of the saddest scenes in the entire MCU. Has a great funeral. So Yondu, because of how good he was in Guardians 2, is going on the A tier. Collector was wasted potential. I'm putting him on the D tier. I like the performance by Benicio del Toro, but he ultimately just kind of ends up dying at the hands of Thanos. I would have liked to have seen more of him. Nebula is an interesting one because if this was just Guardians 1, she's going on like E or F tier. She was super annoying and over the top. However, as we go along, especially into Endgame, she gets much better. And I think she was one of the best parts of Endgame, honestly. Get more development from her, and we get the interactions between our current version of Nebula and the old Nebula, where she's trying to convince her that, hey, you don't have to follow Thanos. You can leave his side and join us. And the older version of, well, older, the old Nebula, younger, I guess younger, but you know what I mean. The 2014 Nebula doesn't want to do that. And then the interactions between her and Gamora in the movie as well. The stuff with Tony and Nebula survived the snap, so we get some really interesting stuff with her in Endgame. So she's a character that went up a lot for me over the years. She got better as the franchise went along. It started off just super annoying. Is that Ironmonger? Yes. Obadiah Stane, Ironmonger, is going on the B tier. I think he's a really good villain. I wish he would have survived the first movie and we would have seen him in Iron Man 2. Aside from that, I think Jeff Bridges' performance is phenomenal. How he can be like so kind and warm to Tony at times. It seems like he's there to help and be a friend, and then you realize he's bad, and then at the end he gets totally psychotic. A character with that much range and that much layers to him, I think are the best villains. So I really like Obadiah Stane. Ronan is one of the worst villains in the MCU. Not quite as bad as Malekith, but I'm going to put him on the E tier. Just way too over the top and generic. I like Lee Pace, but the performance was just, he was so overcooking it for this movie and didn't really do much for me. Wanda is an interesting one because she had the potential to be on the S tier, but because of what they did with her in Multiverse of Madness, I think I'm putting her, do I put her down at the B tier or staying with A? I'm going to stick with A because up until Multiverse of Madness, I really liked what they did with the character. I liked the introduction in Age of Ultron. I liked the stuff in Civil War to where she accidentally kills some people and feels really bad for it. And then Infinity War is forced to kill Vision in Endgame, and also forced to watch him die again. In Endgame, she returns and kicks Thanos' ass. Great stuff in WandaVision to where her grief basically makes her take control of the city and torture these people just so she can live out her fantasy. But my problem is, at the end of WandaVision, she realized what she did was wrong. Once she realized fully what she was doing, she let them all go. So she kind of redeems herself at the end there and clearly feels bad about it. People say that, oh, she didn't feel bad about it at all. Yes, she fucking did. Pay attention. The line about they didn't know what you sacrificed, yeah, that's not great. But we did feel like she was in a good place at the end of WandaVision. Once we get to the beginning of Multiverse of Madness, she is just a full-on evil villain right away, just willing to so casually kill so many people. That was just too jarring for me, too much of a jump, and people say, well, it's because of the Darkhold controlling her. That's cheap. I don't like having this object control someone, and that's the reason they're doing all the things that they're doing. So I guess none of it was actually her fault. It was all the Darkhold, and now, so she's just going to be good again? Because obviously she's alive, so yeah, I don't know. It was just the characterization of her in Multiverse of Madness was just too jarring, and I don't like the Darkhold as the excuse. And if they were going to use the Darkhold as the reason, they should have fleshed that out more. They should have had her start the movie as a hero, and then as the movie goes along, have the Darkhold slowly corrupt her, and then she becomes a villain in the end of the movie because she has finally succumbed to the temptations of the Darkhold. That would have been much better to me, but what we ended up getting with her in Multiverse of Madness was frustrating, so that's the reason she's on the A tier instead of the S tier.
That doesn't seem fair.
Quicksilver, I don't know. I'm putting him on the C tier. I enjoyed him in Age of Ultron, which is the only movie we saw him in. He had some fun interactions with the other Avengers. He's a likable character, but he gets killed off too quickly to really make an impression. Vision. Vision is going on the B tier. I have always found Vision pretty bland. Honestly, like when they bring him in Age of Ultron, he was an interesting addition and he kills off Ultron, has some good lines, but just a character that never really stood out to me that much, wasn't super memorable, as like, especially when you compare him to like Tony and Cap and Thor and stuff. But he definitely, I think if it weren't for WandaVision, he might have been on C, but WandaVision was the best we got from this character by far. And it's funny because most of the Vision that we see in WandaVision was not the actual Vision. It was just Wanda's like creation of him. And then we get White Vision at the end, who is alive, so, and now has the original Vision's memory. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think B is a good spot for Vision himself. I really, really liked him in WandaVision, his interactions, him kind of realizing what Wanda is doing and calling her out on it. I thought that was really well done. Before that, it was just kind of a powerful character that got super nerfed in Infinity War and was just kind of sitting around the whole movie. So there is definitely more potential for him down the line. Ultron is going on the B tier. Ultron could have been an A or S tier villain. Based on what we saw in the trailers, he was super scary. What we got in the movie, I think, was pretty good too. He was a little bit too quippy. I understand that he was created by Tony Stark, and Tony Stark is quippy, so that's why Ultron does the quips. But I think it would have been better if he was the really scary version of Ultron that they showed us in the trailer. But he still ended up being a pretty good villain that was a serious threat to the Avengers. Ant-Man. I like Ant-Man. I don't know if I can quite put him... Can I put him on the A tier? You know what? I can. I think Scott is that good of a character. I really enjoy him in his own movies, but honestly, I think the best version of Scott Lang that we got was in Endgame. I mean, he was a guy who just lost his lover and Hank and Hank's wife as well, so he was kind of all alone. I mean, his daughter was still alive, but the scene with him and his daughter was so well done. Honestly, one of the better parts of the movie. That and him kind of walking around when he finally gets out of the quantum realm and not knowing what the hell is going on. That was so well done, and going to look at the tombstones and stuff. Really well done stuff. And then he is basically the reason that everyone was brought back. I mean, he is the one who figures out the quantum stuff, the fact that they can enter the quantum realm in one point in time and then exit in another point in time, and they were able to go back and collect the Infinity Stone. So if it wasn't for him, half of all life would still be dead. So I really loved what they did with him in Endgame. Great interactions with the other Avengers, and the idea that he was the one that saved the universe, essentially. So, I mean, you got to put him on the A tier. And Paul Rudd is just excellent in the role. Just such a likable, funny guy who seems like an everyday guy that you would want to hang out with. Wasp, I'm going to go B. Was not a massive fan of Wasp in the first Ant-Man movie. She kind of annoyed me. I found her kind of bitter and unlikable. However, in Ant-Man and the Wasp, I liked her a lot better. I loved her interactions with Scott, and her humor and her badassery. Got to join the fight and kick some ass, so Wasp is on the B tier. Hank, I'm also going to put on the B tier. Hank is kind of a dick, and he hasn't like fully realized that and had a complete character arc yet, so I'm hoping that's what we get in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. But Michael Douglas is really good in the role, and despite being a dick, he definitely cares about his family, and is a very smart guy, and definitely has some funny moments as well. Luis. I love Luis. Luis might be the funniest character in the entire MCU. I'm going to put him on the B tier just for how funny he is. I mean, every single scene with him in the 2 Ant-Man movies is absolute gold. The way he tells his stories, I mean, I can't even... That's some of the funniest stuff, not just in the MCU, but in any movie ever. Michael Pena is just incredible in this role, so I have to put him on the B tier, even though obviously he doesn't have a ton of character development, but just because of enjoyment alone, he's on the B tier. Yellow Jacket is going on the D tier. Honestly, he's another villain. It's pretty generic and forgettable. He's kind of a lesser copy of Obadiah Stane in a way, the corporate guy who's trying to take over and ends up fighting our hero in the end with similar abilities and a similar suit. So I thought Obadiah was the much better version of that, and Darren Cross kind of just felt like a cheap copy. Is this Rhodey? Yeah. Rhodey is going on the B tier. And it's possible with Armor Wars he can move up, but Rhodey is a character that has kind of just been a sidekick to Tony throughout the entire MCU. I really like Terrence Howard's version of him in the first Iron Man. And I like Don Cheadle's version. It's a bit different. I would have liked to have seen more of Terrence Howard, but not that Cheadle's been bad in the role. He's been really good. Just not someone that we got a ton of characterization from until Endgame, where we got a little bit of it with his interactions with Nebula, which is another thing I forgot to mention, where they're teaming up together for going back to get the stones, and she grabs the Power Stone, and she's like, I haven't always been like this, and Rhodey's like, yeah, me too. I thought that was a really nice interaction between them. So Rhodey's a character that is good, but we haven't really dove much into as a character, so hopefully obviously we're going to get more of that in Armor Wars. I mean, he is the main character, so looking forward to that. Nick Fury is also going on the B tier, and he's getting his own show with Secret Invasion. I mean, he is the main character of that show, so he's another one that could move up after that, but for now he's on the B tier. I mean, he's the guy that put the Avengers together. He is responsible for them even being a thing. It was his idea. He recruited all of them. Samuel Jackson is awesome in the role, but another character that we really haven't gotten a ton of development from, although Nick Fury in Captain Marvel was just totally awesome. It was a different version of him. It was a pre-cynical, pre-jaded Nick Fury, where he's kind of a little bit more fun and, just free-spirited. So I enjoyed that, and I certainly think that after Secret Invasion, he could move up to the A tier. Spidey is going on the S tier, and he definitely would not have been on the S tier before No Way Home, but No Way Home is absolutely what elevated him to one of the best characters in the entire MCU. Up until that point, he was good, he was fun. Tom Holland was a great pick, and he is arguably, I now think Garfield is the best Spider-Man, but Tom Holland plays both versions of the character Peter Parker and Spider-Man so well. He's really quippy. He actually seems like a high school kid, unlike the other two when they did their own movies. But what we got in No Way Home was Spider-Man stuff that we needed. I mean, we hadn't really gotten a proper origin story for Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man. We hadn't gotten the tragedy that Spider-Man needs to fully become Spider-Man. We finally got that in No Way Home with Aunt May's death, and that is the tragedy that he needed. He got the "with great power comes great responsibility" speech, and then the interactions with the other Spider-Man reminding him of who he is and what they do. Super well done stuff. So Spidey is an S tier MCU character. Holy shit! Aunt May. I gotta put Aunt May in the C tier. Rest in peace. She's a character that has always been fun, and I don't mind at all that they made Aunt May a younger woman, because she's supposed to be his aunt, right? Not like his great aunt or grandma. Maybe she was his great aunt in the original one, but made sense to me. And I thought that Marissa Tomei is really good in the role. Didn't get much characterization from her. She got to do a little bit more in No Way Home, to where she's actually kind of fighting and trying to save Peter, and it ends up getting her killed. And then we get the, again, like I said, with great power comes great responsibility stuff. The fact that excuse me, the fact that Peter deciding to save all of these villains, which is what ultimately led to Aunt May's death. That was Aunt May's idea, and she sticks to it even when she's about to die. So that part I really liked, even though, I might... I'm moving her up to B just because of No Way Home. She was really good in No Way Home, so I'm moving her up to B. Oh, rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman. T'Challa is going on the A tier, and he certainly could have been an S tier character had Chadwick Boseman not tragically passed away, or had they recast T'Challa, which I still think they should have, but that's a totally different conversation. This is a great character. And we see him first in Civil War, which Civil War is a great movie, but somehow T'Challa kind of ends up stealing the show in Infinity War. He was so damn good in that. He goes on this revenge mission after Bucky because he thinks Bucky's responsible, and then he ends up going after Zemo because he finds out Zemo's responsible, and then decides that vengeance has consumed him, so he's not going to kill him. So well done. And then you get his arc in the first Black Panther movie, where he is kind of forced to realize, because of Killmonger's actions, that Wakanda needs to change how they operate, needs to open up to the world, and he realizes his dad was a hypocrite. So I thought that was a really good arc too. And then we get some cool scenes with him in Infinity War, like running side by side with Cap, and get this menace shield. So man, I miss Chadwick so much, and his presence was definitely missed in Wakanda Forever. This is Zemo, right? I'm going to put Zemo on the... you know what? I'm putting him on the A tier. I think Zemo was really, really good. I thought he was really good in Civil War. A lot of people don't like him in Civil War. They say he wasn't necessary. Bullshit. He was absolutely necessary. He was the one pulling the strings behind the scenes. He was the puppet master, moving the pieces to get the Avengers to do what he wants them to do. He wins. He breaks up the Avengers without having to lift a finger, which is what ultimately leads to them getting defeated in Infinity War. And then we also get more of him in Falcon Winter Soldier. He was one of the better parts of that. We get a little bit deeper into him as a person. He's not a terrible person. And he has some fun interactions with Sam and Bucky, and how he basically says that he hates the super soldier serum, and he admits, he concedes that Steve Rogers is the one person that could have and should have taken it. He's like, yeah, fair point, but nobody else is Steve Rogers. So really, really interesting character, Zemo. Doctor Strange is going on... I'm putting him on the B tier, actually, because I think, people talk about the characterization of Thor being inconsistent. I think the characterization of Doctor Strange has been quite inconsistent, especially when you factor in No Way Home, to where he is kind of a dumbass in No Way Home. He blames all this stuff on Peter for not calling the school, but why would he decide to do this really dangerous spell without talking through all the details with Peter ahead of time? That seems wildly irresponsible, and just acts like kind of goofy in that movie. I thought he was fine in the first Doctor Strange, just kind of a knockoff of Tony that wasn't nearly as likable. But he has a good arc in the movie. And then I liked him best in Infinity War. I loved his interactions with Tony and the stuff where he looks into the future and then ends up giving up the Time Stone to save Tony. I thought there was some really good stuff in there. And then the brief appearance that he has in Endgame. In Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, I thought he was good, but if they should have focused more on his arc. He got kind of an arc, but I don't think they went quite deep enough into it as they should have. I like the stuff about him admitting to Christine that he loves her in every universe, and the idea that he always needs to be the person holding the knife, the person in charge. But there was just so much going on in that movie, and it was only 2 hours long, that they could have done a little bit more with him. Wong is just a very fun character. I'm putting him on the B tier just because of how awesome he is. He's kind of the new Nick Fury, people have been saying. He's the guy that appears in everything now, and he's fun every time we see him. He's just a character who is super sharp and witty, and every time someone says something to him, he's always got a really good comeback. The first Doctor Strange, in Infinity War, in Multiverse of Madness, in No Way Home, in She-Hulk. I mean, in Shang-Chi, every appearance that Wong has is great, and every time I see him on screen, I enjoy it.
Oh, it's funny.
The Ancient One. You know, this is tough because she's only in one movie. She makes the most of it, so I'm going to put her on the B tier. I think the Ancient One is quite a good character. I love her interactions with Strange, calling Strange on his bullshit, being like, no, I'm going to show you what's real. And then the stuff when she's about to die I thought was really good, and her brief appearance in Endgame I enjoyed quite a bit as well. Mordo. Now, is this including the other version of Mordo in Multiverse of Madness? I'm going to say no. I'm only going to include the version of him that we got in the first Doctor Strange, which was really good. And I can't wait to see more of him. He's a character that was basically so good and so righteous that once he realized that the Ancient One was pulling from the Dark Dimension, he quits and decides that all sorcerers are bad. And I love the end credit scene from the first Doctor Strange and what it teased. I just hope we get to see that down the line. And they just had a stupid throwaway line in Multiverse of Madness. Like, yeah, he tried to kill me over the years. What? I want to see that. Please show me that at some point. If we don't get this version of Mordo again, I'm going to be really pissed. Caecilius is one of the most forgettable MCU villains. E tier. Super generic. I mean, Mads Mikkelsen is a really good actor, but he was kind of wasted in this role, honestly. Dormammu. I've come to bargain. You know, Dormammu looks really cool, really sinister, seems like a real threat, but he is only just in that one scene, and it's a good scene. I love the time loop and Dormammu gets really confused, like, what is going on, and then makes a deal with him. But I can't really put him any higher because he is just in that one scene. So D tier, and we are definitely going to see more of him down the line. We got Charlize, who is apparently Dormammu's niece, which I don't really know how that works, but he's a character that we will definitely see again, and he will definitely move up this list. Mantis. I'm going to put Mantis in the C tier. I enjoy Mantis. I think she is fun. Probably one of the weaker Guardians because she hasn't gotten a ton of development, but has some funny lines and is a very powerful character, so I hope they dig a little bit deeper into that as well. Ego. I love Kurt Russell, but Ego is not a very good villain. I'm going to put him on the D tier, only because of Kurt Russell's charisma, but honestly, this is probably the least charismatic he's ever been. They found a way to make Kurt Russell kind of dull, and Guardians 2 in general has a massive villain problem and a tone problem, and some of that involves Kurt Russell, like when Star-Lord shoots him after he finds out that he killed his mom, and then he turns into David Hasselhoff. Just some weird stuff there, and he's showing this presentation about all these people that he's had sex with. I don't know. Yeah, Ego, again, love Kurt Russell, but I just did not dig Ego at all. Agent Coulson is a lot of fun. He's going on the B tier. Rest in peace. He is a character that he appeared in a lot of the early MCU movies, and just a very likable guy that has some funny lines, and his death really hits hard and ends up being the thing that basically galvanizes the Avengers into fully teaming up for the first time. Hulk. I don't know. Oh, jeez. I'm putting Hulk on the B tier. There are aspects of Hulk that I really like, but I think they have really dropped the ball with him recently. I think after the opening scene of Infinity War, which was really good, I mean, that was to establish how much of a threat Thanos really was. Everything after that, I have not loved. I do kind of like the idea of Hulk not appearing in Infinity War, but if you're going to do that, you have to make up for it by having a badass Hulk smash scene in Endgame, which we never get. We just get Professor Hulk, which is kind of weird. He kind of looks funny. And we just never get Hulk being badass, kicking ass in Endgame. and I don't know if we're ever going to see it again, so that's pretty disappointing. But some of the earlier Hulk stuff, I think he's at his best in the first Avengers movie. Like the first time he gets released on the helicarrier was really, really well done and scary, and then the moment where like, I'm always angry, that was really cool. But just what they've done with him recently has been so frustrating that I think B is a good spot for him. Kraglin is a character that is fun, got some funny lines, but just don't really have much characterization from him, so C tier. MJ. I'm going to put MJ on the B tier. MJ has gotten better as the Spider-Man movies have went along. I was not a big fan of her in Homecoming. She was just kind of annoying. She was kind of the gothic trope, or like the loner girl trope, but she got a lot more likable in Far From Home when Peter actually starts hanging out with her, and then she's even better in No Way Home. I think Zendaya is really good in the role, but again, another character that doesn't do a ton by herself, so I hope we get more for down the line. I'm sure we will. I mean, there's no way that this is the last we've seen of Zendaya. Ned is also going on the B tier. Just a really enjoyable character, really fun guy, and we might see him turn into a villain, even though he said he won't. I don't know if I want that, just because Ned is so likable. I mean, the line in Homecoming about I was looking at porn is just absolute gold. One of the funniest moments in the entire MCU. I mean, he's the guy in the chair. He's Peter's best friend, and he is really good at that. Vulture. Vulture is at least going on the A tier. I'm considering S. I think I'm going to keep Vulture on A. But, God, I don't know. I mean, it's hard because he's only in one movie, but that's how damn good I think Michael Keaton is in this role and how good the character is. I mean, this is a villain that is one of the most relatable villains in the entire MCU because he's not doing what he's doing because he's evil. He's not trying to destroy the world or destroy the city or anything. He doesn't even really want to kill anyone. He just is a guy that got screwed over by Tony Stark, screwed over by the government, and he wants to make a living, so that's why he's doing what he's doing. Very, very relatable guy. And Keaton's performance is excellent, especially in the car scene. Oh my God. One of the best scenes, one of the best showcases of acting in the entire MCU. Keaton was the best part of Homecoming by far. Hela is going on... She's going on the A tier. I think Hela's great. Some people say she's more of a generic villain, but I don't think so. I mean, Hela is someone who is definitely evil and doing really evil things and definitely says some stereotypically evil lines. However, you look at her backstory, she was conquering these planets with Odin, and Odin banished her and buried her with all of this history, and she comes back and says, that's not fair. And that's what I'm talking about with a lot of the stuff that happened in the Thor movies, a lot of the bad stuff that happened being Odin's fault. So Hela makes some good points about Odin burying his stuff, like, where do you think we got all this gold from? And wants to restore Asgard to its former glory. Like, I can get that. For a motivation for a villain, that makes sense. And she is also super imposing and threatening. Definitely one of the most powerful villains the MCU has ever seen, and she's probably dead at this point. I mean, Asgard exploded, but who knows? We didn't see a body, so it's possible we could see her back again. I mean, Thor had to resort to Surtur to kill her because he couldn't do it himself, despite fully unleashing his full power and fully realizing it. Barely even did any damage to her, so I think Hela is an awesome villain. Okay, Grandmaster. Grandmaster is a lot of fun. I'm going to put him on the B tier. I understand that he doesn't have that much screen time, but Jeff Goldblum is just so good, and the Grandmaster is basically just Jeff Goldblum being himself, but it is so damn entertaining. I mean, Ragnarok is one of my favorite MCU movies, and the Grandmaster is part of the reason why. Just all of his lines, all of his interactions with characters, so well done, and it fit perfectly for the tone of the movie. Valkyrie is also going on the B tier. I really enjoy Valkyrie, and she could easily move up at some point. I think she is becoming one of my favorite characters in the entire MCU because of Tessa Thompson's performance and how badass she is. I love Valkyrie, but she's not a character that has gotten a massive arc. I mean, she had kind of an arc in Ragnarok to where she decides to save Asgard, and she had kind of buried herself in her dream. You know what? I changed my mind. Valkyrie's going on the A tier. Valkyrie's great. I mean, she does have kind of an arc in Ragnarok. Originally I thought that she didn't, but no, she actually does. I mean, she had buried herself in the bottle and decides, you know what? I am going to save Asgard. And then in Love and Thunder, we get a little bit more into her backstory with the lover that had passed away while they were fighting. So Valkyrie is awesome, and Tessa Thompson is just gorgeous. So I changed my mind. I originally had her on B, but after thinking a little bit more, I think that I'm putting her on A. Screw it. Korg is going on B. Korg is a character similar to like Ned or Luis, who is just a very, very entertaining character. I mean, especially in Ragnarok. He gets to be a little bit much in Love and Thunder, but he is so much fun in Ragnarok. A lot of the funniest lines in the movie come from him, and Taika is just a perfect choice to voice him. And I love the stuff in Endgame too, with him playing video games. I thought that was a lot of fun. Surtur is going on... Surtur is kind of similar to Dormammu in that very cool looking villain, very scary villain, but we only get like a few minutes of actual screen time with him, so I can't really put him higher than that. I wonder if he is somehow still alive. I know that Asgard exploded, but he seems like a character that could potentially survive that. Shuri is going on the A tier. I really like Shuri in Black Panther. I liked her a lot in Infinity War. I like how she kind of outsmarts Ruffalo. Why didn't you just do this? Oh, because we didn't think of it. So she's clearly, if she's not the smartest character in the MCU, she's definitely one of them. And then I liked a majority of her character arc in Wakanda Forever. I don't love that she ended up becoming Black Panther over some other characters who I think would have been potentially better choices, but it also seems like she might not be Black Panther for that long. I think Shuri is a really good character, and yeah, A tier. Okoye. I can't put Okoye on A because she doesn't like have a big arc, but she's a character that I really like, and Denai Guerrera is really good in the role. I mean, the scene where she gets fired by Queen Ramonda in Wakanda Forever is just so damn good, so well performed by both actresses, and a character that is just badass and really likable and someone that we always root for. I mean, she also turns on her husband in the first Black Panther to save Wakanda, and I thought that was really awesome. Nakia is another character that I really like, but I want to see more from her. I mean, it was great to see her in Wakanda Forever looking just fantastic, especially with the long hair. And I hope we can see more of her down the line. I'm sure that we will. But I really like her. I like her interactions with T'Challa in the first Black Panther, and I like her inclusion in Wakanda Forever. A very skilled person who has a lot of abilities and is very enjoyable and likable as well. Is that Abomination? I think this is Abomination, right? Yes. You know what? I gotta make sure. Why would Abomination be in between these Black Panther characters? Hold on. Yeah, that's Abomination. I'm gonna put him on the I don't know. C. He was okay in Incredible Hulk, I guess. I mean, pretty generic villain with a pretty generic motivation. And then he was kind of enjoyable in She-Hulk, even though it was a complete 180 for the character. But I thought it was fun anyway. Queen Ramonda is going on the A tier. I think she's excellent. I mean, if it wasn't for Wakanda Forever, she wouldn't be on the A tier. But Angela Bassett's performance was just incredible. People have been talking about getting nominated for Best Supporting Actress for that role, and I completely agree. She stole the show in the movie, just provided so many layers of emotion and gravitas. I mean, she dealing with the death of T'Challa and then having to fire Okoye, which is one of the best acted scenes in the entire MCU. We get the scene of her in the UN where she's telling them, like, no, Wakanda's not weak. We are still very, very strong. Queen Ramonda is an excellent character. M'Baku, You know, I think I have to put M'Baku on the... Oh, you know what? God, I don't know. Fuck it. M'Baku's going on the A tier. I just like him so damn much. And he has also a bit of a character arc in the first Black Panther to where he is going against T'Challa in the beginning. He even fights him for the title of Black Panther, loses, and then ends up joining the fight later on in the movie. And then is also part of the fight in Infinity War and gets some really good stuff in Wakanda Forever, gets some really good interactions with Shuri, kind of like a mentor, a voice of reason to her throughout the movie, and also has some really funny lines. So M'Baku is just awesome.
I'm kidding, we are vegetarians.
Everett Ross, he's going on the C tier. I enjoyed him in the first Black Panther, but he was not necessary in Wakanda Forever at all. I think he's a fun character, but we haven't delved into him as a character much, and I'm sure we'll get that down the line, so I think C's a good spot for him right now. Klaw is going on the B tier. Andy Serkis knocks this role out of the park. Not a very complex character, not a character with motivations that are that understandable. He's kind of just a crazy guy, but Serkis is so damn good in the role and eats up every scene that he is in, so I think I have to put him on the B tier. He's good in Age of Ultron, but in the scenes that he was in the first Black Panther, just absolutely stole the show, and he kind of got killed off a little bit prematurely. I would have liked to see more of him, but the scenes that we did get were just so damn good. Killmonger is going on the S tier. He is just such a damn good villain. You know what? I don't know, actually. Can I really put him above Black Panther? You know, he's only been in one movie. I'm going to have to stick him on A, but it is like an A+ for Killmonger. Killmonger is one of the best villains in the entire MCU. He's a guy that, while he is definitely deranged and he is definitely evil and doing bad things that he shouldn't be doing, however, he's a guy that you understand where he's coming from. He's got a very tragic backstory. I mean, he came home to see his dad dead, and he was a kid at the time, and he was all alone. You can understand why somebody would be bitter and would have a chip on his shoulder and be out to kill people. Like, I totally understand that. You understand where he's coming from. Michael B. Jordan is just so damn good in the role. He is also a very physically imposing character. He beats T'Challa's ass in the first fight and then loses to him in the second one. But Killmonger is an all-time villain that he may not win like Thanos does. He might not actually defeat T'Challa, but he wins the moral victory because he makes T'Challa change his mind about how Wakanda should operate, and he does things differently from then on out, so he definitely makes an impression. And I also liked his appearance in Wakanda Forever.
I'm your king.
Proxima Midnight? Yes, Proxima Midnight. I'm going to put her on the C tier. I think she was one of the better members of the Black Order, probably the best one, but again, not a character that is very well fleshed out or very layered, just a good henchman character. Cull Obsidian is probably the most I think that's his name, probably the most forgettable of the Black Order, but still pretty cool looking and badass, so I think D tier is a good spot for him. Corvus Glaive is also going on the D tier. He's got a couple cool lines, but not much else. You know, Squidward, I think I have to put him on the B tier. What's his name again? Damn it, I can't remember. Ebony Maw. He was easily the best version of the Black Order. He's the only one that really talked that much. He had some really memorable lines, some of the most memorable lines from the movie. And I love that the fight that he has with Doctor Strange early in the movie, he was killed off a little bit prematurely. Wish we got a little bit more of him, but easily the most memorable of the Black Order. Ghost, I'm going to put on the C tier. Ghost is a complex character, but I want to see more of her. She was kind of a villain, but kind of not a villain in Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think the actress did a good job, and we're going to see her in Thunderbolts, apparently, so we'll see what they do with that. Agent Woo is going on the B tier. I was not a massive fan of him in Ant-Man and the Wasp. I thought it was really low-hanging fruit, dumb humor that brought the movie down a little bit. However, I thought he was quite good in WandaVision, and one of the better parts of that show. And he learns how to do the close-up magic, which is just a small detail, but it was a nice touch that I quite enjoyed. So I quite dug him in WandaVision. He's another character that is someone that's just really, really enjoyable anytime he's on screen. And he's a good guy trying to do the right thing. Michelle Pfeiffer's character, what the hell is her name again? Janet Van Dyne. She was cool, but again, she was only in a few scenes. Honestly, I don't even know if I can put her on... I'm putting her on D for now, honestly. I mean, I like Michelle Pfeiffer, and she's good in the role, but we barely got any screen time with her, so she will most certainly move up this list once Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania comes out. Captain Marvel, this is an interesting one because I don't hate the character as much as a lot of people do. I think that Brie Larson, I think that Captain Marvel is more of a victim of bad writing and directing than it is casting, because Brie Larson is a really good actor, and I think she's a good pick for the role. But I just didn't like the way they wrote her in Captain Marvel that well. Endgame wasn't that much better. However, I know it was only like for a couple minutes max, but her appearance in the post-credit scene of Shang-Chi, I really liked, and I found that to be the most likable that she's ever been. And then that with the scene at the end of Miss Marvel, which is what this scene is from, even though she doesn't even say a line, just something seems different about her. She seems more likable, seems like a better version of the character. So my hopes are high that they're going to turn this character around and she is going to be better down the road. Is this Ben Mendelsohn's character, Talos? I think Talos is a damn good character, and we're going to see more of him in Secret Invasion, teaming up with Nick Fury to take down more Skrulls. I quite enjoyed him in Captain Marvel. He was one of the better parts of it, along with Nick Fury. Ben Mendelsohn is just awesome in every performance he gives, but I like how he is kind of different than his usual role in this one. We thought he was going to be like a typical villain like Ben Mendelsohn almost always plays, but he's actually a good guy in this one who is just trying to be with his family. So I really dug that and can't wait to see more of him. Jan Rog is one of the weaker MCU villains. I'm putting him on the D tier. Everyone knew he was going to be bad. I thought it was pretty obvious. And Jude Law is a good actor, but overall a character that I just find forgettable. Mysterio is going on the B tier. I think Mysterio's a damn good villain. There are aspects of him that I don't love. I don't love the idea that he is so casually going from disgruntled Stark employee to so willing to kill so many people. Like that was a bit of a logic leap for me. But aside from that, I think he's really good. I think Gyllenhaal is great in the role, the way he portrays both the fake Mysterio to where he's like an over-the-top, almost like golden age superhero, just a really good guy, really helpful, nice guy that always does the right thing and is willing to like make sacrifices, to the just totally despicable Mysterio that is the real version of him, that is scorned by Tony Stark and is bitter and has all these illusions. I mean, the scene where he lets the illusions down, it's like, see, that wasn't that hard. That was a really, really good scene. And I don't even mind the exposition scene as much as a lot of people do, because Gyllenhaal just is so damn good. So I think B tier is a good spot for Mysterio. A cool villain that I have just a few slight problems with. J. Jonah Jameson, I have to put on the C tier. If it were the J. Jonah Jameson from the original Spider-Man movies, he'd probably be on the B tier. But this one is C. Just a very fun character that serves his purpose to be like this crazy Alex Jones type that says all these crazy things. But it really, really works for the movie. And it's a bit of a different version of J. Jonah Jameson than the original one. But it works for the MCU and works for this version of Spider-Man. And I like the scene in No Way Home where they show the location that he's filming in and what he's wearing. I thought that was really fun. Agatha Harkness, I'm going to put her on the B tier. I thought she was pretty cool. I enjoyed her quite a bit And Catherine Hahn just kills this role, knocks it out of the park. You could tell that she was having so much fun in this role. She has her own show coming up, which I'm not super excited for, but we'll see. I'll trust the MCU, and we'll see what they do with it. But she was very, very enjoyable in WandaVision, both as the nosy neighbor, which we knew all along there was something up with her, and then once she fully reveals herself as Agatha Harkness, she does both versions of the character really, really well. Monica Rambeau is going on the B tier. I really liked what they did with her in WandaVision, and I love how they depicted the snap in WandaVision, and then she comes back 5 years later and her mom is dead, and then she gets sent in to the Westview illusion and basically tries to figure out what's going on, but accidentally says too much, so she gets thrown out. But Wanda also protected her because she kind of cares about her and relates to her, and she's someone that is able to sort of get through to Wanda and understands why she's doing what she's doing and understands her struggles. Again, they don't know what you sacrificed line is not great, but I think that Monica Rambeau was awesome in WandaVision, and I can't wait to see more of her. And we got to see some of her powers too, which is pretty cool. Oh! White Vision is a separate character. Okay, I think I'm still keeping regular Vision on B tier, but White Vision, this is tough because he has some really good scenes in the WandaVision finale. I love the philosophical discussion between White Vision and regular Vision, but I can't put him above C tier because we just need more of him, and we're going to see him down the line for sure because he now has the original Vision's memories, so it's only a matter of time before we see him again. I thought we should have seen him in Multiverse of Madness. It would have made a lot more sense, but we didn't. John Walker. John Walker is an interesting one because he's an interesting idea for a character, and they will definitely do more with him down the line. He's going to be in Thunderbolts, and I think that Wyatt Russell's really good in the role, but the characterization of him in Falcon and Winter Soldier was kind of strange. Like, he freaks out when his friend gets killed and kills one of the Flag Smashers, and then ends up joining the good side in the end, and is kind of bantering back and forth with Sam and Bucky and having fun, and then he is going to end up joining Valentino. So I don't know, it was kind of all over the place, the characterization, so that's why I think C is a good spot for him. I think this is Carly. Carly was kind of wasted potential. She's a character that has some interesting things about her, another villain that is very sympathetic but is doing some bad things. The problem with her is that the show was focusing too much on making her sympathetic that they kind of forgot to even make her a villain. And then they realized that, so then they just have her blow up this entire building full of people so people realize she's a villain. It's like, wait a minute, no. You overcorrected there. That was not the way to go about that. And the way the character ends up going out was disappointing. So the Flag Smashers in general and Carly, they could have done more for sure. Wasted potential. But there was some interesting aspects about her, and I think the performance was good as well. Valentina, I'm not sure. I'm going D tier. I think the actress, I can't remember her name, is fun-ish in the role, but I don't know. I don't really know. It depends on where they go with this character because I'm just really mixed on her right now. Her inclusion in Wakanda Forever was weird, and there was no reason to have her in the movie. So we're going to see more of her for sure. She certainly could move up, but I think this is a good spot for now. Sylvie. I like Sylvie. Sylvie's going on the B tier. I liked her interactions with Loki. Their conversations were really good. I liked how they kind of had conflicting ideologies and how Loki wanted to listen to Kang and how she was so sick of it she was going to do anything to kill Kang. And I guess, no, sorry, it wasn't Kang. It was He Who Remains, but a variant of Kang. And she ends up killing him, which causes all of the other Kangs to be released. So her her bitterness, which you understand why she feels the way that she does, but that got in the way of logic, and it ends up causing a ton of problems. Mobius and Mobius, also going on the B tier. Just a really fun character. Owen Wilson was a great pick for this role. He has a good arc in Loki, a guy that is just following orders and then realizes, wait a minute, what the hell are we doing? And questions authority and ends up getting pruned for it, but then comes back, which I'm glad, because we got to see him on a jet ski at some point. Is that Kid Loki? Hold on. Yeah, Kid Loki. I'm putting him... I don't really remember much about him. I'm putting him on the D tier. I think he was kind of fun. This was the best Loki variant by far. He was the best performance, the most fun character, the most memorable, so he's going on C. Yelena is great. Yelena's going on the A tier. Already one of my favorite MCU characters, and she's only been in 2 projects. She stole the show in Black Widow, the best part of that movie, for sure. I mean, I love the stuff about her, making fun of Natasha for her landings and the posing and stuff.
It's a fighting pose. You're a total poser.
I'm not a poser.
She ends up doing that later in the movie, and it's like, ugh, like she feels really gross about it. And then she's also awesome in Hawkeye. Her interactions with Kate Bishop are some of the best stuff in that show, and just such a badass fighter, and I can't wait to see more of her. Yelena, plus it's Florence Pugh, and I love Florence Pugh, so. Red Guardian was also awesome. I'm putting him on the B tier, because we haven't gotten as much from him, as much characterization as we got from Yelena, but one of the better parts of Black Widow, just such great lines. I loved his interactions with his family. Such a fun character. I was not as big of a fan of the mom. She's going on the C tier. Just not as memorable. I mean, she had some good stuff in the movie. Again, the family stuff was the best part of Black Widow, but she is probably the least memorable of the family members. Taskmaster was incredibly disappointing. E tier. Character with so much potential, so cool in the comics. I was very much looking forward to Taskmaster, but what she ended up being was just incredibly disappointing and forgettable. Captain Carter. Now, this is the Captain Carter from What If, not the one from Multiverse of Madness. So, I'm going to put this Captain Carter on the C tier. Fun character. I like that this different take on Captain America. Peggy ends up taking the serum instead. Fun idea, and I enjoyed the episodes with her, but nothing like super memorable or special to me. Ross, the other Ross, Thunderbolt Ross, who is now going to be played by Harrison Ford, and I can't wait for that. Rest in peace, William Hurt. I like him. Not a super memorable character, but he definitely serves his purpose as kind of the old, grizzled government guy who is given the Accords to the Avengers and gives them kind of an ultimatum. And he's the guy that's hunting down Bruce Banner in the first Incredible Hulk, and he also makes an appearance in Black Widow, so he could move up once we see him in Thunderbolts and stuff with Harrison Ford, but I think for now, the C tier is a good spot for him. So, this is the What If version of Doctor Strange, and I almost want to say he's better than our Doctor Strange, because the arc that this Doctor Strange has in the episode of What If with Christine, and the fact that he just can't let her go, and he becomes like evil and ends up destroying the world because of it, and then ends up kind of redeeming himself by teaming up with the other What If characters to take down Ultron. He was the best part of that show, and I'm thinking about putting him on the A tier ahead of the regular Doctor Strange. I'm gonna do it. That's just how good that episode was. I mean, the best episodes of What If contain this character, and the best one to me by far was the one where he was trying to find a way to keep Christine alive, and it consumes him and ends up destroying the world when he realizes that he can't. So that was so well done. The What If T'Challa, who becomes Star-Lord, putting them in the B tier. That was a lot of fun, and that was also the last time we got Chadwick Boseman in the MCU, which is really sad. But I thought that T'Challa as Star-Lord was really fun, and especially in the last few episodes when they team up to fight Ultron. I was just got a lot of enjoyment out of that. The Watcher, I'm also putting on the B tier. The Watcher is a cool character, and Jeffrey Wright was a great pick for the role. I love how he introduces every episode, and then we see him, and then one of the best parts of What If by far is when Ultron basically realizes that he's there. That's how powerful Ultron has become. That's like a chill-inducing scene, and he recruits all of these other What If characters to take on Ultron, so I like The Watcher. Shang-Chi is going to go on the A tier. I think Shang-Chi is a really good lead character, and I think Simu Liu is great in the role. He's a complex character who has some complex relationships with people and is a badass fighter, so can't wait to see more of him. Awkwafina, I'll put her on... I enjoyed her, but I don't know if I can quite put her in the same conversation as, like, Ned. I'll put her on the C tier. A lot of people don't like Awkwafina's shtick. I'm kind of mixed on it. I think it worked for Shang-Chi. I enjoyed her quite a bit in the movie, but obviously not someone that has, like, a big character arc. And I also don't love how she all of a sudden is completely skilled in, like, shooting. I think, if I remember correctly, and I've only seen Shang-Chi once, doesn't she end up, like, shooting an arrow perfectly at the end of the movie or something? That was a bit of a stretch, but the character's fun anyway. The sister from Shang-Chi is also going on the C tier, and they tease some stuff for the future with her, so there's potential there. I enjoy what we got in Shang-Chi, just not super memorable. The dad, on the other hand, is going on the A tier. Wenwu, one of the best villains in the entire MCU, a very complex and layered character who, again, like Killmonger and some of the other villains we've talked about, is doing some really bad things, but doing them for a very understandable reason. Love for his wife, and he is being enticed by this entity, by the idea that his wife will come back, and he's blinded by that, and it causes him to do all these bad things, and has great interactions with his son, and ends up kind of redeeming himself in the end. So I think that Wenwu is a great, great character, and one of the better characters and villains in the MCU. Jesus Christ, why can't I remember his name? Icarus. Icarus is going on the B tier as well. Icarus is a pretty interesting character because he's someone who's just trying, he's there for the cause. I mean, he's trying to do what he's ordered to do by the Celestials, and has some conflict. He ends up being bad in the end, although actually by the very end he sacrifices himself and has his redemptive moment. But I think he's a good character. Cersei, on the other hand, despite really liking Gemma Chan and her being the main character of the movie, I thought that Cersei was a fairly forgettable character. She was kind of dull, honestly, and I really hope we get more of her to expand on her character a little bit, because there is definitely more potential there, and I want to see more of her. But in Eternals itself, she was one of the more forgettable members. And unfortunately, I can't remember this guy's name, but it's a character played by Brian Tyree Henry, is one of the better Eternals, so he's going on the B tier. I like how he's a guy that basically ends up living a normal life. He's got a husband, he's got a kid, and he ends up joining the fight in the end. And he's also a very funny character. He's got really good sarcasm and goes back and forth with some characters multiple times, so it makes for some of the funniest moments in the movie. I enjoyed him quite a bit.
Fall collection, IKEA.
Okay, so now to address the people in the Who section. I actually had to cut for a second to figure out who these people are, and upon further inspection, I realized that this is Echo, this is Electro, this is Namora, and this is Atura, I believe. So, Echo is going to go on the C tier. I liked her enough in Hawkeye. I definitely think there is potential there. I like that she is a deaf actor playing a deaf character, and definitely a badass character, but didn't get enough from her in Hawkeye for me to put her higher than the C tier. Could certainly move up once her own show comes out. Electro is going in the B tier because I thought he was great in No Way Home. And again, this is the Electro from No Way Home, not including the Amazing Spider-Man 2 version, which I thought this one was much better. Yes, I understand that they completely changed the character and it doesn't really make any sense, and he's basically just Jamie Foxx now, but I thought it worked much better, and he was pretty memorable. He stood out and was the third best villain to me in this movie. Very entertaining. Namora is going on the C tier. I liked her character. There was some interesting stuff with her, and Namor just didn't get a ton from her. And then Atura is going on the D tier. Aside from fighting Okoye and having a couple other action scenes, didn't really get much from this character. So, you know what? He's going on the C tier as well. Just because the fight scene with Okoye was so memorable and so well done. But definitely Namor was by far and away the most memorable character as far as the underwater characters from that movie. Some of his people weren't necessarily as well developed as him and were kind of afterthoughts. That's why these two are the only ones on here, but they were decent characters. All right, there you have it, guys. There is my entire tier list of all of the major MCU characters as created by @Amario_. So again, shout out to them for creating this list because I was never going to do it myself. If they forgot anyone, I can't think of anyone major that they did, but if they did, let me know, drop a comment below, and I will respond with where I would have put that character on this tier list, what tier I would have put them on. I was actually able to do this in 3 takes, aside from the cut where I had to figure out who the people on the Who tier were. There was only one other cut. Let's see if we can figure out where that was. I had to take a drink of water at some point because this is a long-ass video and I need to take a drink of water again, so I'm ready to get this thing over with. But don't exit the video just yet. I want to talk about likes real quick. Oftentimes, people who I'm friends with in real life who don't have YouTube channels and don't understand how the algorithm works will go up to me in real life and say, I don't even bother liking your videos because it doesn't do anything. That couldn't be further from the truth. Guys, likes are instrumental for channel growth and helping get my video out to more people. So please, if you enjoy my content, hit the like button. It just takes a second and it is super, super helpful. So thank you for that. And if you enjoy my content in general and are looking for more MCU content, which is definitely coming, subscribe to the notification bell to get notified when I post a video for more MCU content and more movie content in general. So stay tuned for all that, and I'll see you soon.